Hi, my name's Kevin Hicks. Welcome to my YouTube channel, The History Squad. Now, the film today, the video, has been requested by my Patreon members. Thanks, guys. Harold Godwinson, the last Saxon king of England, Harold II, who is said to have taken an arrow through the eye at the Battle of Hastings. Or did it? Is it just simply legend? But we'll have a look at that later. But before we carry on, let's just take this helmet off so you can recognise me. And a quick impersonation. See if you can guess what film this is from. He chose poorly. Right, let's carry on now. So, Harold Godwinson, born 1022, the son of Earl Godwin of Wessex and Githa Thorkelsditter. Now, she was actually related to the kings and queens and earls of Scandinavia. Let's see if I can name them. Denmark, Jutland, Sweden, Finland, Norway. She is real royalty. So Harold Godwinson, son of Godwin, has an awful lot of royal blood in his veins, but he is a Saxon. Now, he has a brother, Tostig, and a sister, Edith. She becomes Edith of Wessex, and believe it or not, is queen consort to no other than Edward the Confessor, the king at the time. Harold Godwinson was described as being very tall, a handsome man who had a bit of a sense of humour. He was also said to have been noted for his physical strength, his courage and eloquence, as well as his acts of valour. So Harold ends up becoming one of the most powerful men in all of England. In fact, the second most powerful man outside of the king. In 1045, he becomes the Earl of East Anglia. And then when his father dies in 1053, he becomes the Earl of Wessex. And then he picks up an extra one in 1058. He becomes the Earl of Hereford. He basically controls a complete third of the whole of England. And he is the main opposition to something that's often missed in England. You see, Edward the Confessor had spent an awful lot of time in Normandy. And when he returns to England, he brings with him clergy, noblemen of Normandy, and they have a growing strength in England. So Harold Godwinson becomes the main focus of opposition against the Normans already in England. And then he comes to notoriety, he comes to fame with a campaign in Wales, which is quite something, because I didn't actually know about this one till I did my research. So this campaign in Wales, quite something. So what happened was this. 1062 to 1063, there was a little bit of a campaign because the ruler of Gwynedd had actually conquered the whole of Wales. His name was Gruffydd ap Llywelyn. Llywelyn, famous name in Welsh history. But in 1063, he was killed by his own troops. Get your head around that. And then in 1064, Harold Godwinson marries the former wife of Llywelyn, and that's Aldith. She was the daughter of the Earl of Mercia. Now, on top of this, they have a couple of sons, twins possibly, who live to adulthood and live out their lives in exile, so I understand. And now add to this that he has a mistress, or in Danish law, she was his wife, Edith Swanneck, and they have a number of illegitimate children. One of those children was Githa of Wessex. She is very important for the future line of Harold Godwinson, but I'll talk about her later. You see, what happens in 1064, Harold Godwinson is on a voyage to Ponthieu when he's shipwrecked. He's handed over to the court of William, Duke of Normandy, who considered himself to be the rightful heir to the throne of England once Edward the Confessor dies. Now, it appears that Harold Godwinson is held as a virtual prisoner at the court of William, and under duress is made to swear an oath of allegiance to hand over the crown of England to William once the old king dies. In 1065, Harold Godwinson sides with rebels, or a rebel's cause, up in Northumbria, but it's against his own brother Tostig, who was Earl of Northumbria. Tostig had levied unpopular but unjust taxes against the population. They're far too heavy. So the rebels had rose up. Harold Godwinson supports them. Tostig flees into Norway and sides himself with the King of Norway, Harald Hardrada, the Hard Rain. And Tostig is replaced with an earl called Morcar. The family of the Godwinsons now is divided. In fact, Tostig has sided with an enemy. On the 5th of January 1066, Edward the Confessor dies. He left no written will. But William, Duke of Normandy, reckons he was the rightful and legitimate heir to the throne of England, and that Edward had indeed promised him the throne some years before when he'd visited Normandy. They also state that Harold Godwinson had promised to support William's claim to the throne when he had been held in Normandy some years before as well. But this was under duress, and none of this was written down, so it's not legitimate. Now, Harold Godwinson claims that Edward, on his deathbed, promised Harold the succession to the throne. But it was the Witan, the gathering of the notables and the Earls of England, who agreed that Harold Godwinson should be the legitimate King of England. They chose Harold, not William. So Harold was crowned King of England the very next day. Now there's a third claimant to the throne of England, and this claim was supported by Tostig, no other than the renegade brother of Harold Godwinson, and this is Harald Hardrada, the King of Norway, who claimed that he was related to King Canute, and through that lineage he had a rightful claim to the throne. What happens next changes the entire course of the history of England. So 1066, what a year. What a great subject. There's a fantastic book and it's called 1066, the Year of Three Battles. It's great because what happens is this. To the north, Harald Hardrada, Hard Rain, invades the north of England, together with Tostig, the brother of Harold Godwinson. The Earls of the North, together with Earl Morcar, remember him, were supposed to stay behind the walls of York, reinforcing it. This would have kept the Viking army in check, allowing King Harold to concentrate on the threat from William, Duke of Normandy in the south. However, Morcar and his earls decided to come out and face the Vikings. It was at Fulford Gate. They were outmaneuvered and their army was basically destroyed. It was a major defeat for the Saxons of the north, but what's worse, it leaves a Viking army on the loose in the north of England. This leaves the north wide open, so Harold races to the north. He defeats the Viking army at the Battle of Stamford Bridge in September then. Tostig, so they say, was killed by Harold, but Harald Hardrada is shot through the throat with an arrow. And there's a little side here. Apparently, as he's dying, he tried to compose his death poem, but the monk who was writing it down basically said, no, it's rubbish. So he made it up. I love all of these side stories. Meanwhile, news arrives to Harold Godwinson that William, Duke of Normandy, has arrived in the south, and he is burning, looting, and killing. So Harold Godwinson races to the south. Now, I've got a question for you. Put yourself into the shoes of Harold Godwinson. What would you have done? You must have known that Hardrada was going to invade the north, and you already knew that preparations in Normandy were ongoing, ships being prepared for an invasion of the south. What would you have done? Can I tell you what I would have done? But this is just Kevin. I'd have sailed across to Ouistreham, and I would have burnt William, Duke of Normandy's fleet. But that's just me, and I'm a little bit like that. But the truth of it is, 14th of October 1066, the Battle of Hastings happens, right? This day-long battle, incredible courage on both sides, but Harold Godwinson, of course, is slain. Legend has it, he was shot through the eye with an arrow. Or was he? Because there are other accounts where he was hacked down and hacked to pieces. In fact, at the end of the battle, they could not identify his body. So it was a lover who actually was able to identify part of the body by some personal blemish or other. There are lots of stories attached to this, and there's a little Norman one where they said he was buried on the shoreline looking out at sea, and there was a headstone carved, "Here lies the body of Harold Godwinson, King of the Saxons. Now he watches the sea like he should have done." Now, I mentioned earlier about one of the illegitimate children of Harold and Edith Swanneck. That's Githa. She goes on to marry Vladimir, Grand Duke of Kiev Rus. That's modern-day Kiev. Now, because of this marriage, Harold Godwinson is proclaimed martyr by the Russian Orthodox Church, and every 14th of October it's Harold Godwinson's feast day. But it goes on further, and I actually love this because I love to know, where are we from, where your family's from. Because of that marriage into that royal family there, the Rus, most of the kings of France up until the Revolution could trace their lineage back to Harold Godwinson, as can our King Charles through his mother, Queen Elizabeth. Apparently they could claim lineage to Harold Godwinson. So the story didn't end at Hastings. It continued on to the present day. And I find that absolutely fascinating. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video there. If you did, like, share and subscribe, and don't forget to turn on the all notification buttons, because you never know what's coming on down the line with the History Squad. But before I go, quick shout out to some of my Patreon members who, without their support, I don't think I'd be able to do all of these videos that we do. First of all, Aditya Anand, yes, Stephanie Walker and Hannah Wallace. Now there's a name. I might just feature a film about a certain Wallace in the future, but for now, take it easy. Bye-bye.